What's up, everybody? Here we are with the Energy is Love podcast. It's been in full swing now for a little while, a couple weeks, maybe a week. I don't know. It's going great. We're loving everything that we're doing, and we're loving everybody that we're getting to talk to and meet and spreading this love and this energy out there. So I'd like to thank our sponsors for the show, Crystal Water Float Spa. Go online, crystalwaterfloat.com, or find them on Facebook at their Facebook page. You can just search Crystal Water Float Spa. If you're enjoying the podcast and you're enjoying listening, by all means, donate. We've got a GoFundMe account set up. You can go find that on our Facebook page. We've got it linked there. Like I said, if you're enjoying the podcast and you're enjoying what we're doing, go and support us. Throw us some cash, send us some love and some energy so that we can keep doing it and we can keep expanding and seeing where this thing grows. We're also always looking for new sponsors. If you want to become a sponsor of the podcast, we'd love to have you. Reach out and contact us. You can email us at energyislovepodcast@gmail.com or go to our Facebook page and message us there. You can find us on Facebook at Energy is Love Podcast. On today's show, we got the opportunity to chat with Tina Jones. Tina is a life coach. She runs her own business. She's an entrepreneur for the past 20 years. And Tina also incorporates neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, into her sessions with her clients and helps them kind of rewire the neural pathways of their brain. She had a really interesting story to share. Tina grew up in a fundamentalist Christian religion in Oregon, actually, is where she originated from and where she came from. And she shared a lot of her story from that time period in her life and growing up in that environment and in that energy. And, you know, it was really interesting to sit down and chat with her and see kind of where she's come from and what she's experienced in life and then how she uses that to help her clients now. Enjoy the podcast, guys. Thank you very much. And here we go.
You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is the Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Podcast for the universe.
Energy is Love podcast.
Here we are again on the Energy is Love podcast. Thanks everybody for joining and listening. My guest today is Tina Jones. Tina, welcome. Thank you for coming out and taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
So Tina, for those people that don't know you, don't know anything about you really, tell us a little bit. Like, first off, are you from Utah or where do you originate from?
I am from Bend, Oregon. That was where I was born and raised.
Nice. How long have you been in Utah?
I've been in Utah for about a year and a half.
Okay. Are you liking the change?
I'm adjusting well.
I would imagine that Oregon's probably different from Utah.
Everything's different. Yeah, very much.
Utah's it's got some unique quirks to it, I think.
Yes, very.
That
Between the driving and the roads, the liquor laws,
that's
the recycling.
We're a little behind the times in regards to some areas, but it's a cool state. It's a neat place to live.
Yes, I've found a niche where I'm comfortable.
Good. So the Energy is Love podcast is all about spirituality, all about energy work, the universe. Really, it's just about cool and interesting people that are kind of moving through life in a balanced way and have some sort of connection to something, whether it's the universe, whether it's God. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's just that connection to something that they kind of draw strength from. So tell me a little bit about yourself and what is your connection? Where do you find your strength, your source of that kind of connection?
I'm kind of a science-based person. I am not real sure if there is anything outside of myself.
Yeah.
So I really believe in humanity, and I absolutely believe that people are amazing and perfect at birth, and that the world comes in and pulls you away from yourself, or family or dogma or tradition pulls you away from who you naturally are. And if you can go back to that core person and who you are and look inside yourself, you will find the answers that you need to be what you're supposed to be here on earth.
Yeah, I like that. I think the same thing. I think we all kind of do come out perfect, and then the next thing you know, life comes along and jacks us up. Mm-hmm. And when we taking that kind of idea or that thought that everybody's kind of born this way, we're all kind of born perfectly balanced and aligned and still connected to whatever it is from wherever we came from. Mm-hmm. What do you think is, or what have you found for yourself to get back to that point? Like, what do you do that kind of takes you back to that state?
Good question. So The last year and a half being here in Utah has been a real search to find myself again, and I've been reconnecting with who I was and who that little girl was before I got pulled into the school and the patriarchal system that I grew up in, that I have been angry at. And who was I before all of that? So I have been using I kind of go into story and take myself back in time to specific moments where I was really clear in my childhood that I knew who I was. I have one particular incident where my dad used to garden, and tomatoes are hard to grow in Central Oregon climate because it's cold. So he would build a little greenhouse around the individual tomato plants. I was probably 4, and it was spring. And so there was just the little shell of a greenhouse built with sticks around, and the plastic had kind of all disintegrated or blown away. And I crawled up inside that little square shape and stood there and preached to the rest of the dead tomato plants. And in that moment, I knew who I was and why I was here on the earth. And I knew in that moment that I was a strong woman and that I had a message to bring to the world.
How old were you?
I was 4.
Really?
And I remember right about that time, we had a fence along the back, and a neighbor man poked his head up over the fence. And I remember instantly going, oh my God, I'm a woman and I can't teach. I can't speak. I don't have a voice. I need to shut up. And I pulled back inside of myself and forgot about that little girl.
Yeah.
Because the religious dogma that I grew up in said that women shouldn't teach and that we were supposed to submit.
That wasn't their role, right?
Right.
Interesting. So you found that as an adult, you're able to kind of go back to those instances and go back to that space where you can kind of not relive, but kind of rehash and rethink and analyze those experiences. Yes. It's about
it's about kind of following my gut and knowing in my core, in my body, in my heart, in my mind, in my feelings, exactly who was I in those moments in life, when moments that were, how do I describe them? Expansive, like just at peace. I knew that I knew that I knew who I was in those moments.
Yeah. Really connected at that point, huh?
Yes.
That's cool. Tell me what you do. Like, what is it that you do in regards to, I know that you work with clients and stuff like that because you told me a little bit about it, but give us more info on that.
Well, this last year and a half has been about reconnecting and finding out what exactly I do. So I'm writing my personal story about my kind of journey out of religious dogma and the patriarchal system. And I used to have in Oregon, I had a residential housekeeping service because I kind of began that out of survival. Yeah. Because as a single mom, I needed to take care of my kids. And I worked really hard. I worked all the time. I didn't have a life. I didn't have friends because all I did was work. Yeah. So being here in Utah is now, I sold that business. And my husband got a job promotion is why we moved here, and I sold my business. So between those two things, I've had time to reconnect with myself, and I've known for the last 10, 11 years that I wanted to be a coach because who I am is I believe in people, and I seem to reflect back to them and help them feel good about themselves and help them find themselves again. Cool. So, I help people overcome kind of the drama and the bullshit that's going through their head and get really clear with their conversation that's going on in their mind and with the conversation that's going on externally. So it's kind of a 2-part thing because I teach I teach people life skills about how to communicate in a way that removes the shoulds, the have tos, the going tos, and live a life of I choose to.
Mm-hmm. So you're a life coach, basically, right?
Yes.
And then is that what you call yourself? Is that kind of what your business model is?
Yes.
Cool. What kind of, I don't like the word modality. That's a term in regards to all these different things that people do and the energy community and the spirituality and everything like that. But what do you do? What kind of techniques, what kind of ways do you incorporate into your business, into working with people to help them through that process?
So as a child, when we're kids, things happen in our lives and we make decisions about ourselves or decisions about the world.
Mm-hmm.
Once we make that decision, now that we're adults, sometimes those decisions about ourselves or about the world no longer fit for what we want to do. So our brain has a tendency to generalize. It's like, so when we're a kid, we've decided that art is not a good thing, and so we generalize and say that, all art is bad. I'm basing that on a specific story that I have of, I'm at my core, I'm a very creative, artistic, kind of fluid, spontaneous, outgoing, gregarious person.
Yeah.
But that personality didn't fit with my father's values and with his goals. So he kind of tried to squelch that personality and mold it and shape it into what he thought was best. So I have one instance where we had a teeny tiny house, which literally was 700 square feet with 5 kids.
Oh, wow.
And my dad built a foyer with the sheetrock walls, just the plain walls, and they were plain and boring and ugly. And I was little, I was maybe 3 or 4, and I had a brand new box of crayons. And I thought, oh, somebody has to do something about this boring entryway. It's quite functional. Yes, it's great to come in from the snow and throw your boots and coat in the entryway. But wow, it's just really ugly. So from my perspective, I thought it was my job to make it look pretty, right? So I went to work and made the most gorgeous picture of my dream house and a rock walkway and flowers and the sun and rainbows and birds and all kinds of nature things. And it was just amazing and beautiful until my dad found it and I got one of the beatings of my life.
Yeah.
So art is what I generalized was art is bad. Art is not something we should do. Well, now as an adult, going back to that, I can revisit that moment and reframe that whole belief system and know that we shouldn't paint on walls without permission, but art is a wonderful expression.
For sure.
So I'm kind of re-exploring that part of myself.
Kind of re-embracing that creativity and everything.
Yes.
Neat.
So that's what I help people do is look at their belief systems that they currently have. Are they valid for now, for life now?
Mm-hmm.
Or do they need to be reframed or reworked?
Yeah.
And then also traumas, specific traumas that happen in people's lives. Sometimes we get so stuck in the story of the trauma and we retell the story over and over and over again because we're either trying to be heard or trying to find emotional healing.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a process that can help people get over the story. You don't even have to tell me the details of the story, but we can rewrite it and reframe it and take away the charge of it, take away the energy and make it just place it in a different place in our brain.
Yeah. Rechange that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. So you referenced a couple of times this religious thing, this place that you came from, this thing that you had to break free from. What religion was it?
So hard to define. It's not simple. So over the years, I've kind of avoided this conversation because it's just too difficult to bring up. I'm kind of a weird oddity, and I've always thought of myself as that. And it's been interesting coming here to Utah and connecting with the ex-Mormon community, because I actually, for the first time in my life, can tell my story and have them nod their heads and go, oh yeah,
They
I
totally
get
connect
it.
with it.
They totally get it. And I have never felt that validation before. So that is really cool. I came from a fundamentalist Christian group, which, so I'll throw out a bunch of different things and maybe somebody will get it. But Bill Gothard kind of followings, Duggar family, kind of, they were the TV family of, 12 Kids and Counting?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with it.
Anyway, so some people know who that is. Or there's also a mini series on Netflix called Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yeah.
So I kind of relate to that.
Do you?
Yeah, I totally do.
It's one of my girls' favorite shows. It's a fun show.
When I watched that show for the first time, like probably 8 months ago, I cried through every episode.
Oh.
And would go from being laughing to pissed off to crying. So basically, I was the youngest of 5 kids, and my father was a convert into a small missionary-focused religious community. We had no television. My older siblings did, but when Dad got saved or converted, he threw out the television. We weren't allowed to listen to radio, and we weren't allowed to listen to books or go to movies. And my mother didn't drive, so my world was really small.
Yeah.
As a child, it was me and the sagebrush and the dirt. And as I got older and we kind of moved into town, it was me and my bicycle. And my bicycle could take me to places like the local Rite Aid, where as a teenager I could read Teen Beat magazine and see what everybody else in the world was doing, and kind of figure out what was cool and what was not cool.
Yeah. Or what just existed outside of your little world and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But as being 18 and throwing out into the world, it was just having conversations with other kids my age was awkward. Mm-hmm. I would just kind of nod and smile and pretend along. But my brothers and I used to listen to like Fibber McGee and Molly on the radio. That's what people 30 years older than me used to do.
Yeah.
So I had a hard time relating to my generation.
So you said your dad converted to that religion or whatever at some point. Do you remember a time in your life when it wasn't that way, or because you were the youngest, it was always that way?
It was always that way. He was converted when I was a year old.
Okay.
So I remember looking at pictures of my siblings, and they used to have Christmas and they used to have Halloween even, and which is, a devil's holiday. Oh my God, we can't celebrate that. So, we didn't have holidays other than Thanksgiving because that was the only true Christian holiday.
Interesting.
So
Not Christmas, though.
No.
That's not a Christian holiday.
No, it's actually based on paganism.
Yeah.
It was, you go back to the foundations of Christmas and it's all about paganism.
Yeah. That's weird. I mean, when I say weird, not in a bad way, it's just kind of interesting. That's a unique story, something to come from that. Like, did you have at some point where you had to initially growing up, I think, especially if that's something that you're just born into, that's just the norm, right? So you don't initially really understand that there's much different.
Right.
Did you always have a sense, though, as far back that you can remember, of knowing that this wasn't, didn't connect with you, didn't resonate with you, or?
I knew that when I was little, I was intrigued by other cultures, reading the National Geographic. I would see other cultures, and I remember saying something about the Chinese and how they dressed, and I thought that having a wedding ceremony, because that's the ultimate goal for any girl in that culture, is getting married, right? That's all you have to think about. And taking care of a house. I was intrigued by other cultures and other religions, and I remember my dad going, "Oh no, that's all paganism. You can't even think about that. You can't even look at all that." that's totally ungodly. And I was like, wow, really? Just suck all the fun out of my world. So but I didn't know any different until I was probably like 13, and some girl from the outside world came in and kind of introduced me to what life out there was like. And so because my whole world was my cousins and another family of boys. My whole world was boys.
Was it just all that really, and were they all involved in the religion as well?
Yeah.
So it was just a really tight-knit group.
Yeah, I didn't know there was any other world outside of there.
Yeah.
I still knew that I was pretty pissed about a lot of things because we got beatings on a regular basis for talking. I always got beat for talking or for not knowing my spelling words, or, a lot of public shaming. And
did you go to regular public school?
no, that was my world was no.
So, I mean, were you homeschooled in a sense, or?
No, they started their own school, so we actually went to a building, but it was the same kids that I saw on Sunday and Tuesday, and it was some of the missionaries that were teachers in the school. So my average class size was 2.
Wow.
And the biggest class size was 5. The entire school was an average of 20 kids every year. So when I graduated from high school, there was 2 of us. So
that's really interesting.
So my world, as far as studying, so I've had a lot of like PTSD type symptoms to get over.
I imagine,
especially in regards to school and learning. So, or sitting still. Because I was a highly active kid, and it was hard. The teachers had a hard time getting me to sit in a chair, and I would make noise and fidget. Now I know that I'm a kinesthetic learner, and that, I'm a visual learner, not an auditory learner. So an auditory learner can sit and listen to a lecture and get something out of it. I can't do that very well. So, and I need to move and wiggle and write and color while you talk to me, or I can't hear a word you say.
Yeah.
So I get that now as an adult. So yeah, I got beatings every day for wiggling and talking. And yeah, there was two people in our class. So I grew up with this, always in competition with the same guy. We were the same age. And we were always in competition with each other, academically and physically too. So when it came to sports or anything, so some of those things I didn't win so well, but some of them I did.
So at some point in your life, did you have to do it? Like, did you have to, consciously make the decision that you're leaving that realm, you're leaving that space, you're going to kind of...
It was a long journey.
Was it?
Yeah. When I was 18, I went to college for a year at a community college and studied psychology and sociology, and was like, my brain was ready to explode. I had only read the old King James Version of the Bible, and I have more of it committed to memory than most pastors in America do.
That's all that you ever read back in the day?
That's all we ever read.
Wow.
Or we read school textbooks. Mm-hmm. So that were all from Becca Curriculum, which is a Christian organization. So all of my education, I didn't know what evolution was. I knew the things I knew how abortions were done backwards and forwards, but I didn't know what sex was or I didn't even know how animals did it.
Yeah.
My education was in some areas exceptional, and in other areas completely lacking. So I didn't know who was president of the United States. I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't.
That's so interesting.
I didn't know. It was completely controlled. So it was like, this is what's perfect. And so I was kind of like poised to be the perfect child, right? Because I grew up from birth to age 18 in this highly controlled environment, and I'm supposed to be this perfect.
Were you being molded for something? Like, did you always know growing up that there was some intention for you in
To
life?
get married and have babies.
Just to perpetuate that
I was
cycle?
11 when my dad decided, my dad kind of always said my mother wasn't a very good housekeeper, but my aunt was. So at 11, he farmed me out to my aunt to learn how to clean house. So I would go from school, somebody would pick me up from school, and I'd go to her house, and I'd work every day after school cleaning house. So I could learn how to be the proper
So you
wife.
could learn how to clean.
Yeah. I started taking care of myself at 13. I got my own job so that I could get, what I wanted for clothes and shoes.
Yeah.
But
So I have a belief. I have when I say a belief, it's something that I feel real strongly about. I think that every single person at every given moment is exactly where they're supposed to be. I don't think that there's any sort of accidental things or things that we experience that we're not supposed to experience. And there's a lot of different belief systems in regards to, like, we have a book of life that is written before we come here, or contracts that we make. And I don't get into it that deep. For me, it's just real simple. Like, I believe that we're always right where we're supposed to be. And so, I mean, do you have that same kind of belief or that same kind of understanding of things?
I do. Once I got past all the anger and resentment, I do. I believe that all of that has been for a reason.
So that's my question. Like, that's why I'm curious about is, like, have you gone back and kind of analyzed it and looked at it and been able to not just glean the good from it, but really understand of why it was that you experienced that life, or that, had to go through that?
Yes. So I went through a period of life where I was just threw it all out and was a total party animal for a while, trying to escape whatever. And then finally came back to traditional, normal Christianity and was involved in the Assemblies of God Church and got married there and was super religious and super spiritual because I was all that. And I knew right and you knew wrong because I knew more scripture than you.
Yeah.
And I can quote more of the Bible backwards and forwards than you can. And damn, I was good. But I was so self-righteous. And there wasn't room in my world for error. And there wasn't room in my world for... But I was super angry and disconnected from my true self.
Yeah.
And went through a nasty, nasty divorce. And it was in that middle of that divorce, my husband kicked me out. And I obeyed like a good Christian wife. And in that moment was like a 3-day period that was just absolutely changed my life. And I finally was able to kind of encapsulate all of the religious bullshit into one thing that Jesus says in Matthew that all of the law is contained in one thing, in this, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and your neighbor as yourself. So what does that mean? What is love? And when I went back, well, what is love? 1 Corinthians 13, right? Though I speak with the tongues of men, I could quote the whole thing. But basically, I'll paraphrase it. What I did then in that moment was, okay, so that means the law that says I'm supposed to stay married to this man that's abused me. I can throw that out the window. So the law that says that women don't have a voice, I can throw that out the window, because the only thing that counts is, do I love you and do I love me in this moment? And what is that love? And when I write it in your own words, it's not that I say and do all the right things, that I have a perfectly clean house, or that whatever, all the religious righteous things that we say or things that we do. Instead, it is, do I see the best in you? Do I hope the best for you? Do I desire the best for you? Do I do the same for me? In this moment, am I giving and offering whatever it is I do, if I'm cooking a meal for somebody, or if I'm cutting a rose to go give to somebody, or if I'm, rocking my child to sleep at night, am I doing that because I believe and hope the best for them and hope the best for me? And that takes away all the guilt, all the judgment, all the blame, all the shame.
Yeah.
All of that is gone if in this moment, all I have is love.
Is that how you try to move through life now? Is that kind
Yes,
of your purpose now?
Yes. And so that was 14 years ago. And that was kind of the beginning of changing my life, kind of throughout the Bible, throughout the church, and kind of did start my journey of actually reading secular books. Wow. First book I picked up was Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Uh-huh.
And then I picked up, started reading Wayne Dyer. It was actually those moments when I first picked up a Wayne Dyer book. I was like looking over my shoulder, scared, going, oh my God, lightning's going to strike me. I mean, and I hear you laugh, but it was like, I had this physical fear of bears are going to come out of the woods and eat me.
Is that ingrained, huh?
Yes, because, some Mormons know what I mean when I say that.
Yeah.
Ex-Mormons, a bear will come out, it's a story in the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. That if, bears are going to come out of the woods and eat me. I mean, there was just huge fear that if I disobey God and disobey his commandments, I'm going to be struck with lightning.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that anymore.
Good.
I don't believe that there is any big bad guy in the sky
watching over us, making sure that we abide by all the rules and laws.
How incredibly, absolutely cruel for God to make me a woman and strong and have a voice and a message to bring to the world, and then write a book that says you can't say a damn thing. That's fucking cruel.
Yeah, keep your mouth shut. Yeah.
I don't believe in that kind of a God. I believe that who I am and who God made me, or if God made me, or just who I was born to be, is absolutely perfect. And if I just be that and be that love to the world, that's
what it's all about.
Yes.
Totally. So that's kind of a really neat, amazing, unique, weird, not in a bad way, story to come from. Have you been out of it for, did you say 14 years, or how long ago had you kind of left that whole lifestyle and chose something different? I know you talked about switching to kind of a more traditional Christian aspect and getting married and everything like that. But is it just recently, like in the time that you've been to Utah since you moved from Oregon, or was it longer before that?
I disconnected from the people in that church and in that community when I was about 19.
Okay.
I've kind of gravitated, I've gone back to them a few times. But getting my brain out of that was a whole different thing. So, and then going to traditional Christianity, the Assemblies of God is a lot more open, but I still had to get out of the thinking. So it was really only 14 years ago in my divorce that I completely got out. I did go back to my father's church for about 4 or 5 months. My son wouldn't even walk in the front door of the building.
Really?
Yeah, he just knew that it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I kind of revisited it and kind of looked at the whole thing and was like, no. So yeah, it's probably been about 14 years. But this is the first time since I've been to Utah that I have told my story.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm glad that you're sitting down telling it. Is it kind of difficult? I'm sure it is a little bit, huh? Kind of voice it a little bit?
A little bit. It's been good. Yeah, a little bit. I've been writing it. I've worked through a lot of it, so it's not as highly charged.
Uh-huh.
And I know there's a reason.
For sure. I think anytime you can share your story, even when it's, do you know what I mean? It doesn't, when I say yours is drastic, it's not drastic. It just is what it is. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's your life. That's what you've gone through in your experience. But I think anytime we share our stories, anytime we can kind of impart that experience that we had, it helps somebody, because everybody can kind of draw parallels, even though all of our lives are so uniquely different and individualized to us as people. We can see some of those common threads and some of those things, and then we draw inspiration and insight. And I think that's kind of the whole big point. For me, it's all about kind of those interpersonal relationships that you can create with people and that energy exchange that happens. And so I applaud you for sitting down and telling your story, because it's difficult.
Yeah, it's I used to think it was incredibly unique, and I used to think that I was the only person in the world that had experienced such thing. But now that I'm talking about it, and now that I'm looking up other people, there's lots of other people who have grown up in a whole Bill Gothard society or a homeschool system, and that whole belief system and that structure. So hopefully I can be a voice for them or help them untangle themselves from a negative belief.
You said you were writing your story. Like, are you writing a book about it? Or are you trying
Yes.
to get it all? And how's that going?
Good. I kind of have 8 key principles that are have come out of it, like life's learned moments in time. I remember one moment in time facing a tough decision through all of my craziness when I was 19. I had an unplanned pregnancy and came home and had to make a decision about what to do, because of course abortion is not an option.
Yeah.
And I remember my brother over and over telling me, as I kind of laid out my decisions in front of me, he kept saying, there are no wrong choices. You're not going to make a wrong choice, because I wanted to not fail. I wanted it to be a good choice for me and a good choice for my child. And my brother said, there are no wrong choices. So that is one of my key principles. There are no wrong choices.
Yeah. I totally agree.
You know, no matter what you do, you can learn from it.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the other principles? Give us like 3 of them.
The first principle is be solution focused.
Be solution focused.
When you are solution focused, instead of getting in the place of I'm right, you're wrong. If I'm right and you're wrong, then I have an agenda to fix you and change you. And that's not love. Love says, I believe in you. I hope the best for you. I desire the best for you. But it doesn't say, I have to fix you. So be solution focused. And when you be solution focused and communicate to the other person in a way that helps them to find their own core values and helps them to come up with a solution, and you collaborate, you meet in the middle, and everybody wins. That's the first key principle.
Okay. I like it. That's a good one.
The second one is you're never alone because you always have you. I spent years alone as a child. I know what alone is. It was me and the sagebrush. Being the youngest of 5 kids, the next youngest child, my brother, was 5.5 years older than me. So everybody else was off at school.
Yeah.
And my mother was stuck with her nose in a book, and we were in the middle of the desert. So I was alone for hours, and I entertained myself in my whatever ways. I entertained myself with the sticks and the sagebrush and the bugs. But you're never alone because you have you. Sometimes we're always looking for an outside relationship or another person or the next thing or the next car or the next clothes or the next new haircut or the next thing that's going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
But if you can't feel good about you and just be you and love yourself, then nothing else will ever make you happy. So you always have you.
I like it. That's another good one. Self-love. So what's the third one?
Well, the other one was there are no wrong choices.
There are no wrong choices. Yeah. Those are really good. And you said you've got 8. What's your timeline you're thinking for your book? Are you thinking...
I would love to have it in my hands by this fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you work with clients? How do you incorporate all this life lesson stuff that you've gained and you've kind of gleaned over your life? How do you turn that into helping people? Because it sounds like it's very, very beneficial. The way that you've been able to go back and kind of analyze and look. And like I said, you said so yourself where you had anger initially and you had to get past that. And you got past that point, and now you've got all this information that you can kind of use. And are you finding that the people that are coming to you, not just drawn to you, but do you think that there's a reason that they're coming to you because you have that experience and for whatever reason it kind of lines up that way.
Yes, that's always very interesting how the clients come to you that are perfect in the
Yeah.
right time. So, and I kind of see that I'm kind of an expert in several areas. I've owned and operated a business. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. So some of my clients come to me because they've never been self-employed and they're not sure how to run and operate a business.
Yeah.
I can help them with that. The other one is relationships. So finding how to communicate effectively and clearly with your partner and without expectations. That's a huge thing, is having loving someone without expecting something in return. So, because one of my other key principles is happiness is not found in the have-tos. In a relationship, if you have a lot of have-tos, of I have to do this and you have to do that in order for us to be happy, things don't work.
Yeah.
And if you throw those out, throw out the have-tos and the expectations and just give to each other from a place of, I want to, I choose to, the relationship can flourish. I guess I've used these principles partly as a beginning point to get somebody through, because when you work through the 8 key principles, it can get you unstuck from a place.
Kind of move your life along from that unstuck
Yes.
place. And then we talked a little bit before we actually got going, a little bit about the process of NLP and that experience. And I know that, like you said, so share with me what that is and your experience in that. So those people that aren't familiar with it.
So NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, and it's basically studying people who do things right. So the one principle that my dad taught me, which I do hang on to, is that if you're going to do something, find somebody else who's doing it right and do what they do.
Yeah.
So it's all about modeling people who have had success. And these are therapists who've had success. So Richard Bandler in the 1970s wrote up little systems or formulas based on therapists who'd had successful clients. And they're actually had clients who had gotten over things and found success in their life. So they're actually really simple. Some of the processes are 10 minutes and some of the bigger ones, getting over trauma, are more like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's about rewiring where a memory is stored in your brain.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it, I mean, because it neuro-linguistic programming, I mean, it sounds to me like it probably does have to do with some of that rewiring of those neural pathways in your brain and stuff like that, right?
Right. So Wayne Dyer calls them mind viruses. I like that terminology.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So I help you extract your mind viruses.
I like that.
So we get, you know how you just get stuck in a situation and your brain just goes on this automatic pilot and it just goes over and over and over. And it's almost like this little vortex your brain gets sucked into, whether it's depression, anger, resentment. Those are some of the bigger ones that are just, they feel heavy and dark and they start with a simple thought and then another thought and then another thought. And they just become this cycle. And sometimes it's hard to know how to get yourself out. So I kind of reach a hand out and grab onto yours and I help pull you out of that. And then we just retrain your brain. You know, we get the virus out in front of us. We're going to reprogram it so that you don't get sucked into that vortex again.
So it doesn't keep recreating and keep just happening over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Very cool. What other kind of stuff have you, like, are there any other modalities or any other things that you've kind of learned when it comes to energy work that you help people with, or what are you familiar with? What do you like to do or use?
I'm kind of a science-based kind of person.
Yeah.
So I've used nonviolent communication, which is from Marshall Rosenberg in 1960, which is basically how to resolve a conflict. We've all been taught in the corporate world, when an angry customer comes to you, what to do with that. You know, when an angry customer comes to you, you're supposed to empathize. Yes, sir. I'm so sorry. Your television isn't working the way you want. You know, I promise I'll take care of you. And then, you know, the next step is to, what are the facts? Okay, here's the facts. And then the third step is to I understand what you're feeling, and then what are you really wanting and needing out of this situation?
The whole conflict resolution thing.
That whole that simple 4-step process is exactly the same in a relationship, and we forget that. So when it comes to conflict resolution, conflicts usually happen in a relationship because of values that are differed, values in conflict. And if we can get to the core value or need that each person is wanting and be solution focused again, we can come to an agreement and meet in the middle.
Very nice. So you've been in Utah for a year and a half. What are some of the favorite things that you like about the state?
Long pause.
Have you had a chance to travel throughout the state? I know you
a
live
little
in the
bit.
Salt Lake
We've
Valley,
gone
right?
to Capitol Reef, so got to go down there. So that was really beautiful. The canyons are awesome. Going up on some hikes.
Yeah.
It's interesting being here in Utah. I felt safe enough to explore the spiritual community, which I've never done in my life, because it was never. It's I'm gonna be attacked by demons or something, or I'm gonna be struck by lightning again if somebody reads my tarot cards. Those are things that were absolutely forbidden. So I have explored all of it.
What are you finding that kind of resonates and connects with you? Like, what are you being drawn to? What are you kind of seeing and be like, oh, I like that, or that's interesting?
Like I said, I'm such a science-based person. The one thing that's, probably the two things. I mean, I'm completing Christiana's quantum NLP certification.
That's Christiana Turner, right?
Christiana Turner, yeah. So she blends NLP and shamanism, which I think shamanism is the one thing that I can get and I can understand.
And kind of connect with that.
Yeah. So...
Well, you told the story of being the 4-year-old little girl and the tomato plants and everything. That's very much rooted and connected to Earth and everything. I've
always been very connected to the Earth and all of that. So yeah, that's been really fun to explore. I mean, 2 years ago, I had no idea what Reiki was. Yeah. Other than it was of the devil. And
Did you still kind of have that belief system too?
No, I just avoided. I mean, there wasn't any place to go find any of that stuff. Yeah. In a small town. Plus, it was just totally out of my radar. It was just completely. I mean, it wasn't around.
Yeah, it was just the part of society you weren't even really that aware of.
Right. So coming here to Utah, I connected with the ex-Mormon community because I had this. Okay, I'll say it. I had this loathing and fear of the religious belief system of Mormonism because it felt really familiar to what I knew growing up.
Yeah, what you
and
came
it felt
from.
Very controlling.
There's also the fundamentalist sect of the Mormon Church as well, and that's I've met with some of those people. I've talked with some of those people, and it's really similar to what you described as well.
I have found that a fundamentalist, someone from the FLDS, whatever it's called, we find each other. We just get each other. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
A lot of connections
there. So that's kind of cool. But so I kind of purposefully avoided the Mormons. And so that gravitated.
So you come to Utah.
I know. Well, she just brought us here. But so in doing that took me to the spiritual community. Yeah. And, being an entrepreneur and somebody who loves networking, I just kind of was like, okay, I'll experience it all. So
are you buying into any of it besides the NLP stuff and the shamanism aspect? Like when it gets to the really crazy, weird stuff, angels and, different levels and dimensions and things like that. Are you buying into any of that stuff, or what do you think about all that?
I am not buying into any of it yet. Sorry.
You're totally fine.
I don't know. The whole law of attraction thing. So that would be the one thing that I would buy into.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. You explained to me the law of attraction from the way that you kind of understand it and see it.
I first heard about the law of attraction probably 10 years ago. I got involved in a network marketing company, and someone introduced me to The Secret and the law of attraction. And I I kind of played with it. It was kind of interesting. What I heard from that was I grew up in extreme poverty, and I didn't have to live that the rest of my life. I could do something different and create the life that I actually really wanted. And that resonated with me.
Yeah.
Because, that resonated with me. So I started playing with it just to see, I'm going to manifest a parking space in the front row at Costco. I'm going to do that. Oh my God. Look, there it is. Woo. Hey. Okay. So, and my second step with kind of playing with the whole law of attraction thing was, you know what? I deserve to have the type of relationship in my life that I've always dreamed of. Not the kind of relationship God tells me, because my first marriage, I got married because it was what God said and what the church said and what my dad said.
Yeah.
And it was fucked. Sorry. It was totally fucked. So this time I wanted a relationship that was my choice. So I made a physical list of exactly what I wanted, from physical attributes to, belief systems, that I wanted somebody who could problem solve and who was loyal. And anyways, I wrote that all out. I kind of did the law of attraction thing where you right when you're going to sleep, you imagine that and create that, visualize all of that. And so I did that morning and night, and sometimes 3 times a day, and was like, totally shocked when within 4 months, this person showed up in my world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the law of attraction, that manifestation, that thing's really, really big.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And you believe in that
I
aspect
do believe in that aspect of it.
I think from my perspective and my belief system, at the core of that's the universe, and that's connecting to the flow of energy that's specifically you. And it has to do with positive intention and positive thought.
Right.
And I think when it comes to manifestation and the law of attraction, I think the reality is we are always doing it. We are always attracting a vibration and a frequency, regardless of, we label it good or bad. It doesn't matter, but it's just constant. So wherever our state of mind is, and whatever that vibration is that we're putting out there, is what we're receiving and what we're getting back. And we label it good or bad, but I don't think there is good or bad. I think it's just the attraction that happens, that connection between the universe.
Absolutely. I don't think there is a good or a bad.
Yeah.
I think I agree with that. Absolutely. I think that we are like, I kind of agree with how Wayne Dyer describes it as, I'm a drop in a big ocean. Mm-hmm. I'm just a part of an energy source. I still don't believe that there is a universe or something outside of myself. I think it is me. I think it's a part of me. It's inside of me, and it's inside of everyone else. And when I really silence my monkey brain and connect to that inside of me, I have a wellspring of information and an absolute huge wellspring of resources and all kinds of stuff.
Do you meditate?
Yes.
Tell me about that. What's your meditation practice like?
Meditation is kind of a new thing for me. I remember being in Central Oregon, and probably 4 years ago, it was only 4 years ago that I went to a meditation thing in Central Oregon, and had an absolute crazy panic attack just sitting in the middle of the meditation.
Really?
Yeah. Just freaking out that the door was going to come flying open and my dad was going to come raging in, and bears would be following him, and I'd be eaten. With a lot of the NLP stuff I've learned, I can calm myself, or using EFT, the tapping, can calm myself too. And I've had some crazy awesome experiences in the last year meditating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
think it's about connecting to that source that
Yes.
you're talking about, that thing that's inside of you, that wealth of information that really just exists from the time that, even before we're created and born and come here. Through meditation, you're connecting to that spot.
Yeah, it's given me more confidence in who I am. It's given me more confidence in my message. And I've got some awesome answers. So I usually try and meditate I only commit to 10 minutes a day.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it's a lot longer. I used to be really squirmy at the beginning and couldn't hardly sit still for more than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
My mind would go nuts. And I usually start my meditations with a question. So I guess that would be called insightful meditation.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Anyways, I vary it.
Cool. Do you counsel your clients to meditate as well? Like, is it something that you kind of promote and push out there when you're working with people because of the benefits that you've seen, you've gained from it?
Yeah. So it's a very useful thing.
Yeah. And then tell me about the Utah Consciousness Business Network. What is it called?
Utah Conscious Business Network.
I was close. Okay. Tell me about that because you're involved with that. You're part of that as well, right?
Yes. So Kathy Hughes is the founder of that. Mm-hmm. And her idea was that networking is useful for business, but it's really boring when you do it the same old way with BNIs or, other, it's just really boring. So I connect with that. Being an entrepreneur for the last 20 years, the last 14 years, I grew my business in Oregon through networking. So I went to a lot of BNIs and a lot of women's networking groups, and some of them are crazy boring. And it worked really well for that industry. But figuring out how to market a coaching business is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
So the idea around it is to make it more of a fun community. And it's also about business owners who are conscious, who are open to spirituality.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. I mean, I follow you guys on Facebook, and I know that you host, meetings and kind of group things and everything. And we talked a little bit as well that it's kind of changing up, and you guys are going to start doing some different things in regards to how you run it and operate it, so that it gives people more flexibility and opportunity to connect with one another, and the whole business networking aspect of it. And I think that sounds really cool because it is important. You know what I mean? I found in my own space and in my own stuff where when I started to go out and kind of connect with the different people and, this community of spirituality and everything like that, that's when you really start to see some cool stuff and experience some cool stuff. And then when you make those connections, it allows for growth. It allows for things to kind of expand. And I like that aspect. I think that's a really neat thing.
So yeah, I found my home there.
Good.
So I researched every business networking group in Utah that I could find, especially the free ones. I wasn't going to go back to the BNI. I know how those operate. Don't want to do that. I found my home with the Utah Conscious Business Network. I felt, I felt very loved and valued, and we have a lot to offer.
Yeah.
So we like to provide education to small businesses, and then also times for socials, and then also for business connecting. So yeah, we are kind of mixing it up and we're wanting to do more of these podcasts.
More podcasts.
We're also wanting to do more online meetings. So, and we also want to do success talks, where we interview successful people and then create for 15 to 20 minutes, and then create a little video. So then people can go and watch them and glean from that. Like you said, learn from somebody that's made that success already. Yes. Cool. And you guys are on Facebook. Do you guys have a website as well, or is it just mainly through Facebook that you connect and promote stuff? We do have a Facebook. The Utah Conscious Business Network, yes, does have a Facebook. And then we have an open Facebook group, a website, and then we will be creating a closed members only Facebook group.
Kind of the more devoted, committed people that are kind of benefiting from it. That's a good idea. And then tell me about your Facebook page. Where can people go and find stuff about you and what you do?
I have my personal page, Tina Jones, and then I also have a speaker mentor page. It's also called Tina Jones. So kind of hard to find me.
So you just get on Facebook and Tina Jones it?
Yep, perfect. Tina Jones it. So I will hopefully by the end of this month have a Facebook page or a website out. And then I'm also hoping to create some podcasts called Talk to Tina Jones.
There you go. Well, thank you so much, Tina. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to throw out there before we wrap up?
Not that I can think of.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time. I think it's really interesting, your past, your experiences. But I also like the fact that you didn't take it and turn it into something that, you got stuck in and everything like that. You were able to kind of grow from it and benefit from that experience, even though it sounds like a lot of it was really shitty. But that's a cool thing. That's a neat thing. And so kudos to you. And I appreciate you telling your story and sharing it. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that can hear it and learn from it and gain from it, even those little kind of different aspects that resonate and connect with them. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Energy is Love podcast. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful day.
I knew that I knew that I knew who I was. That's all paganism. You can't even think about that. Be struck by lightning again if somebody reads my tarot cards.